Hello, everyone. Today is the Tuesday, September 20th, Jupyter IPython dev meeting, and we have a big crowd there in New York, part of the team that's holding the Jupyter Lab dev meeting. Before we get going, we want to make kind of the meeting version of the intro that Jamie sent to the dev list. We have Ian Rose, who's joining the team, just got started this week with us and got started in New York as a postdoc at UC Berkeley, and Paul Ivanov, who's an old face from the project and who's returning to the project. Good to have you guys both. So let's run through the meeting in the little plus fashion. Okay, no one put a plus next to their face, next to their name, sorry, which would indicate that no one has anything that they want to bring up. So at the very least, it would be good to hear from the folks in New York on what you are all up to, how things are going, etc.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. The audio is pretty good.
Okay, I've not typed stuff into the HackPad. We got started yesterday, so we're having a Jupyter Lab sprint here in New York City, and there's 8-ish, maybe 9, well, 8 people today. Dan Allen was here in person yesterday. He's at his normal job, I think, today, but then Sylvan joined. And we spent yesterday doing sort of getting organized for the week, and then we did a bunch of issue triage, and we've created some new labels to help us do that. And it wasn't just sort of plain triage in terms of dealing with issues we have already open, but also looking at the different components of Jupyter Lab and identifying what issues are missing from that currently that would get us all the way to 1.0. And so we're basically trying to get a full catalog of issues required for us to close for each component of Jupyter Lab for 1.0 and 0.9 along the way. And for the notebook component, that took us half the day maybe. It was a lot. A significant fraction of the issues open right now are on the notebook. We're going to continue to pick away at that. A lot of the other components are a lot simpler. And then today, we started by having Stephen run through and do I wouldn't say super detailed, but a technical introduction to the new lab extension mechanisms that he's developed over the last many months at this point. And so we just finished that, and we're going to try this coming week. We're getting a talk at Strata, and our goal is to demo a couple different lab extensions to show sort of third-party code working with it. The one part of that that's not done is right now we're using the same logic as NB extensions in terms of config files, installation, and activation. And we know that we want to migrate that to a conf.d style approach that won't require package systems to edit files, but rather than just be able to drop files in a conf.d style directory to activate an extension.
Yeah, so packages basically, was that the only point left where package installation would require sort of arbitrary code execution, so that they become, and package managers kind of want to not have to execute code and only put files on the file system? Is that the last piece of that?
Yeah, that as I understand it, that is the last part. All the bundling of the JavaScript and the creation of the assets is done by the developer of the lab extension when they're packaging their lab extension. And so the user who's installing it won't have to run any NPM or any Python scripts or anything, especially once we get the conf.d stuff working. Other things, I've submitted a pull request to update the table styling, the HTML table styling that is used for data frames and other tables in JupyterLab. And it's long been on my list, but was prompted by a comment by Hadley Wickham last week on Twitter about how nasty our table styling was. I encourage people to look at that. There's actually a Twitter poll out right now. I'm not sure if that's a good idea or a bad idea to ask the internet what they think about design, but it's a very constrained question. And so if you want to have a look at that issue on GitHub, we're planning on.
I saw that one and it looks great, but once it's settled, since it's basically a very small amount of CSS, I think this one would be probably candidate to backport to the main notebook, so that we get consistency between we keep sort of visual consistency, and second, because if this is something that is grading on people, there's still going to be a period of usage of the classic notebook, and so we probably want that one backported. And it seems small and simple enough. Once the decisions are made, once kind of the dust settles, the actual amount of code is not that much.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I think that's a really good idea, and even pushing that out to like NB Viewer.
Yeah,
I think would be NB Viewer and GitHub styling as well. One other comment. I mean, I know we've moved to this new system in the dev meetings of using a plus that gives people an option to say things rather than sort of strongly encouraging them to. And I personally think the default should be maximal disclosure as possible within reason. And so I think the plus idea is not the direction we want to go. Like, I actually want to hear what people are working on, and having them talk about it is more, I think, having them talk about it is important. Different things and discussion points come out. So that's my own 10 cents on how we run this meeting.
Yeah, I'm open to that. I actually wasn't present when the idea for the pluses came up, and I think we can. I don't know what do a poll of people in the room. What do people think? Was everybody kind of annoyed with the everybody having to talk, or was the issue that people felt that that they were just reading from their notes?
I think it was more an indication on if someone really have nothing to say, you should write it so that the person who directs the meeting don't have to say, do you have something to say? No, you don't have, and lose 2 minutes. And people should be reasonable into not describing everything they did if they fix a typo, and just focus on things that are of interest for everyone. So we can still go through everybody. And
there's a way to accomplish that while also changing the default, right? Like, instead of having a plus, if you want to say something, the default is you say something unless you put some other symbol next to your name.
You say minus and you don't want to talk. I think, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
I worry that that's going to be actually a problem in terms of interpreting stuff, especially given the way that it tends to turn minus signs into bullets and whatnot. So I was trying to think of something.
But the Unicode ear slash.
But that's how the old system used to work. Someone might list 10 bullet points and then would only talk about 4 of them. Like, I don't even think we need to put a minus sign there. Like, someone just doesn't talk about that point.
Well, sure, but I think the idea was that it takes a lot of time to then go through every single person if they didn't want to talk. So if there were people with just 1 or 2 bullet points. But I understand also the point of wanting everyone to talk. So.
I think Brian's point is kind of about engagement, right? That by actually having people talk and kind of mention what they're doing, there's a livelier engagement, and we actually pay more attention than simply skimming through the list of text. So
I think that so long though as we want people to be able to not speak if they want, there should be some way of communicating that in the hackpad.
Well, do we then switch to put a minus sign next to your name if you don't actually want to talk?
Sure.
Otherwise,
I'm going to put a minus sign beside my name. There you go. We're good.
And otherwise, you provide kind of a short summary. And as always, you don't have to reread everything. So it really is kind of just let us know what you've been up to. I think that Brian does have a valid point in that leaving things just in text on the notes probably leads to less engagement rather than, hey, oh, this is what you were up to. Okay, that's great.
And I think it goes a step beyond that. If there's something that somebody else writes down that you want to talk about, then it's on you to say, hey, can you elaborate on this one point that you wrote down?
Sure. That's a good point. It seems like Brian stepped out of the room for a second. What else do you folks want to update us on, since there's quite a few of you there and you've all been kind of working on the same stuff?
I have an outstanding PR in Jupyter Lab for the Completer Widget, and because this is something that everyone who creates notebooks or uses the console will end up inevitably interacting with, and because it's something that people have developed muscle memory for and have ideas about, I'd encourage anyone who is curious to play with the PR and see what's there, because some of the behaviors, we know what we want, and that's what's currently in there. Some things were just bug fixes, so of course, if you notice anything broken, obviously, please point that out. But some things are still up for debate exactly what should happen, and I don't want to predispose anyone by running through even scenarios. I'd rather just hear open impressions. So it might be the case that we'll merge it in and we can iterate from there, but it might be the case that even if that doesn't happen in the next couple of days, you could just check out the PR itself and play with it. Or there's a long issue with some discussion. If you don't want to actually build the PR yourself, you could at least check out the issue and see what you think. I've linked to it in the hackpad. Because right now it's mostly been me, Brian, and Matthias talking about it, and then I talked about it a while ago with Fernando, but nobody else has really expressed strong opinions about it. But I think it's the kind of thing that'll annoy you if the thing that you thought was going to happen won't. So, just keep an eye on it.
So that's this is PR870, right, Darian?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And obviously, you're right that completer behavior is one of those things that is very persnickety and that everyone has a lot of muscle memory on. But it also is something that requires quite a bit of discussion. So this is the kind of thing that probably you folks, while you're there this week, you'll have a good chance of brainstorming face to face quite a bit on it, I would imagine.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else from your side, your collective side?
We did an overview of the third-party extensions just a couple minutes ago, and I'm in the process of uploading that to YouTube right now. I've dropped the link in the hackpad here for the STEB meeting.
Great.
So once it's downloading, you guys can watch it and send us any questions you might have.
That's great. I didn't realize you recorded it. That's excellent. It might be a good idea, Jamie, to ping the list also with that just so that people are aware that that video is up and available.
Okay.
Also,
glad you did that. Yep.
As part of our triage yesterday, we did some sort of weeding and gardening in the Jupyter Lab repo, and now have two separate notions for labels. One is cat, which we kept, and the other is component. And so I wrote down the notes, but basically a component is a location that you can point to a file or a directory or where something is. And then the cat is a category for the kind of work that it is. So that may cross multiple things, whether that's documentation. And in particular, one new category that we've added that I wanted to highlight is accessibility. I added that a friend of mine who's a UI designer knowledgeable in these things, wanted to start contributing, making her first open source contributions. And so there's issue 911 in the Jupyter lab repo is sort of her work in progress on that.
Excellent, excellent. And if she or anyone else has expertise on this, I realize that good accessibility is probably a long road, and there's going to be a lot of work to be done on it. But one thing that I imagine can be done now is even if not everything is completed, at least as Jupyter Lab evolves, making sure that we don't paint ourselves into a corner inadvertently, especially, right? So that certain design decisions and certain tooling decisions are made to make it possible to do that work later on. So even if she doesn't have the bandwidth to do everything, having her or anyone else with expertise on this point out what we should be doing to make that job easier in the future would be super, super useful. Because this is certainly an area where we want to improve, and I'm delighted to hear that. Right? Other notes from New York?
One question: is there a written note from the third-party extension overview, or is it only a video you discussing?
There's a README in the repo.
Can you drop that in the hackathon?
Oh yeah, sure.
You can make a note online.
And thanks, Carol. Yeah.
Thank you.
Looks like Mike has a bunch of stuff.
Yes. Though let's go in order. I think Carol, before we get to Mike, unless Jamie and Darian and anyone else from the team in New York has anything else?
Just a couple comments. I noticed in what Thomas typed here that he's starting to pick up the overview paper again, and I wanted him to connect with Brian and Fernando and anyone else on paper stuff. We can collaborate on some writing. And then also tomorrow there's a Jupyter discussion at VID with some folks from Harvard and also the Berkeley Research IT group. So if you're interested, let me know and we can send out a Blue Jeans link to get everybody joining the call. That's all for me.
All right. So if the New York team, if this is it from the New York team, Carol, is there anything that you would like to mention? Since we're kind of in between pluses and minuses, so I'm going to revert back to the old style.
Yeah, I mean, PyData Carolinas was really good. There was a lot of HPC interest as well as interest in Jupyter Lab. And we did an impromptu Jupyter Hub presentation, similar to what we did at Jupyter Days Atlanta. And at the end of that, we had how do you spin up Jupyter Lab as well. So folks had that as a going away present. Min and I are going to work on 0.7 Jupyter Hub and upgrading things and testing, upgrading databases, things like that this week. So, and he should be back online tomorrow.
Okay, excellent. Actually, quick question: do you remember? And I don't know if you can add to the hackpad, or maybe shoot me an email about the HPC crowd that you interacted with. Since at the lab, that's kind of one of my hats at LBL is kind of interacting with the HPC people. Would be good to know what contacts you made in that direction, or people who were there from the HPC side.
Yeah, sure. Probably what I'll do is I'll send you an email later with some of the links and stuff.
Great, awesome. And if you and Min obviously are interested in joining, I mean that meeting at Berkeley started informally because somebody was stopping by and he said somebody from Harvard was stopping by and said, I've been working on Jupyter Hub and I'd like to talk to you guys. But it's kind of ballooned into other people from Berkeley and LBL participating as well. So if you and or Min, I mean obviously or anyone else, but specifically the two of you, if you guys want to join in, it's tomorrow and there will be a Blue Jeans link. I actually have a conflict, so I'm not going to make it. But Jamie, it might actually be a good idea to record that meeting. That might prove useful if people don't mind. You can check, and if people don't mind just recording that meeting, because it might actually be a useful discussion.
You got it.
All right. So Mike, go. Carol, does that seems like you were wrapping it up? Cool. Thanks. Mike, are there things that you'd like to bring up for the group?
Quite a few. Hold my finger on space so I can look at the. Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is there's sort of been some back and forth about how to handle a custom script exporter and whether we want to define that globally for a notebook or globally or on a per notebook basis. So this came up in the context of an R exporter that was supposed to be nicer, that Thomas knows much more about. And Matisse has been the other person that's been going back and forth. And I kind of wanted to hear their thoughts because they're much more clearly and well-defined than my own. And I also wanted to open that up to the group to hear other people's thoughts. Hello?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. The question is, how do we want to handle custom script exporting? Do we want it to be set on a per notebook basis, which is the way that the current PR works, on the basis of some suggestions by Thomas that were responding to the original issue arising from the R kernel folk?
Can you give a little more background? I'm not sure what you mean by custom script exporting.
So Thomas can do a better job than I can.
I can try. So we have as part of NBConvert, we have a script exporter which aims to convert a notebook into a plain Python file, R file, Scala file, whatever language, a plain file that you can run directly in the interpreter. That's kind of very, very basic because of things like, languages have different ways to write comments, and the script exporter doesn't know about all of the different ways that languages write comments. So, are you trying to get my attention, or are you time out?
Sorry, your audio is...
You're muted, Fernando.
No, we know that you're a robot.
So Fernando is muted.
I'm somewhat confused as to what's happening right now.
Sorry, Thomas,
So everybody.
your audio is extremely robotic. So I don't know. Did folks on the call actually get the content that Thomas shared, or is it just on our end?
I had a little bit of difficulty understanding what you were saying, and ostensibly I know what you were saying.
Yeah, and Fernando is muted as well. Apparently, Fernando has lost audio, so he was trying to interrupt you, but cannot. I can try to. Do you hear me better than Thomas?
Yes.
Okay. So I will try to summarize the issue. The issue is that different kernels for different language want to have slight modification on how the exporter to script works, because you have different comment marker, because you might want different filter, you might want to include the markdown or not. And one of the approach that was proposed was to store an extra field in notebook metadata that point to a specific exporter that would be used when NBConvert use a -- to script, or when something else use a script export. The other possibility would be when we install a specific this specific exporter using a Python package for the specific language to register a map from this language. When you have the notebook with this language, use this exporter. And so there are challenges, drawbacks, and advantages to both approaches. And we would like people to come by, look at the issue, look at the PR, and give their thought on that. Does that seem to summarize enough and is long enough to give enough detail? And Fernando is
very
back.
least, it was exactly long enough that Fernando didn't hear any of it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So you guys have, yeah, you guys have provided the numbers in the hackpad. So it may be useful. Are there specific people you want to have take a look at these?
It's mostly wide design discussion. So anybody who is concerned about maintenance in 5 years is welcome to come on the issue. Because it's things that if we change will stick around, affect a lot of moving pieces, will become de facto standard if we implement them. One of these have more implication than long-term.
Mike, you're on mute.
This is for people to be able to write custom exporter packages that are pip installable, which like using the entry points mechanism that we've been trying to percolate through NB-convert right now. And so not only will this matter for us, it's going to matter for how other people go about implementing these sorts of things too. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Matthias. I just wanted to add on that one point to what you were saying. But if you wanted to continue with what you were saying, that's fine.
I forgot what I was saying, and it was not that important, so it's fine.
Or if no one...
Well, I think that this is something that people are going to need to look at and think about a little bit. So why don't we schedule a follow-up for, within a week or two to give people time to look at it, and then circle back. May not be a weekly dev meeting.
Or might be a mailing list discussion.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good idea. So I definitely want you to get feedback on this.
Yeah, and Mike, you might want to just ping the list with things like this that basically require where you want to flag for others to engage. Just drop a quick email summarizing the highlights, just the 2 or 3 high-level points to the mailing list, and encouraging people to then pitch into the issue, so that at least people are aware. And the actual technical discussion will probably happen on a combination of the mailing list and the specific issues. But for things like this, it's a good idea just to flag the list and say, hey, if anybody cares about this topic, something important is happening over here, please come on over. And then a few of us will have a look, because here in the dev meeting, we're not gonna kind of dive into the details and make the technical decisions if it's too long and complicated. But you want to flag it on the list.
Okay, that makes sense. I just figured that, especially since we're focusing, especially in labs, on lots of external, lots of extensibility and stuff like that, and that this was focusing on that people might have a specific thought as to how to do it just off the top of their head. But I'll put it on the list. Some of the other ones might be a bit more technical too. I've got to go through, do some refactoring stuff. I'm going to try to maintain as much API as possible because we have a bunch of circular imports right now. And I seem to be making progress on that. So, but it is going to change the underlying architecture of NB-convert to do that.
You might want to give a quick overview, because the circular import is annoying for a few stuff, and so we have circular import, we need to fix it. And you might want to point to the other issue about the naming conflict.
Oh, the naming. Oh, yeah. That's the other thing, is we also have a function under NB-convert called export and a module called export. And so depending on how exactly you import things, you could get one or the other, which then will make it extremely confusing as to what exactly you're doing. And so one of the things that we're going to try to do is to deprecate the export module in favor of the function and have another module that holds that function. And also, it definitely doesn't help that the export function right now is defined within the export module. So export.export and export are, both things. The other
so we
thing
also would...
what's that?
Yeah, it's also an issue we would like people to have a look at and give their thought on it, because it might break API a little bit, but we like to smooth out how it goes for users, and it's quite complex because actually you have two things that have the same name and we don't want them to conflict.
And the idea is actually to break the API, say, come 6.0. We're just deprecating it for now, is the goal. Because having this around, even if we deprecate it, it's still going to be an issue. Like because we're shimming it, it's still export, the module is still in there. We're just going to be discouraging people from using it. Other things, Matthias and I have gotten the warehouse. We've gotten a patch to the upstream warehouse stuff so that their SQL database can pull in requires Python so that we can actually only upgrade people to Python 3, or only upgrade people to is it IPython 6.0 or Notebook 6.0? That's Python 3 only. I always forget.
IPython.
Okay. So then IPython 6.0, when that comes out, it will actually be possible to stop people from upgrading if they only work on Python 2.
Okay, good.
Also, one of the things is I discovered that we have never handled Chinese, Japanese, or Korean exporting to PDF, even though we represent it in the browser. It's partially because CJK languages are sort of a whole bag of, or can of worms, or a bag of worms for that matter, in Unicode, and getting support for them at all, let alone in LaTeX, is a bit of a mess. I have an open PR that works locally. It fails on Travis. If anyone has any idea, the error right now says generic error, which really, when you're in LaTeX, is about as unhelpful as you possibly can be, given LaTex's tendency to have terrible error messages anyway. But if anyone wants to look at that, the reason I bring it up is that there are a couple of different ways of trying to actually implement that, some of which involve building out libraries, like an external library. One of them involves building out a bunch of templates. Another one is just a preprocessor that sort of handles foreign languages. And one of the things I wanted to know is just Jupyter lore. Has anyone really tried to deal with any? I know we've only gone on to Xylotex for a little bit now, but has anyone dealt with foreign language support? Because I've seen stuff about stopping foreign language support in certain cases. And if that is the case, that our general biases toward reducing foreign language character support, should I not be pursuing this?
No, quite the opposite. I mean, we would like to have good foreign language support in as much as we have the expertise to do it right, though. And so I think one of the fears is simply that each of those topics tends to be huge and very complex. And unless you really, really have a lot of expertise, I'm certainly not going to be the one making any decision on CJK support, because I don't have the foggiest idea what the right decision is on CJK. The languages that I speak are all Western languages, and so once you have enough Unicode support to get accents, that's it. I mean, the difference between supporting Spanish and English on an export is trivial once you have proper Unicode support, because from an encoding perspective, the only differences are just capturing things like accents correctly, right? And so it's really languages that exist in other scripts like Cyrillic and Hebrew and Arabic and CJK and things of that nature. And for that, we really, I mean, unless we have someone, it's very similar to the topic of accessibility. Unless we have the person with the right expertise, we can't really dig into it. So I would say do no harm, but don't get sucked into that rabbit hole unless we have someone who actually knows what needs to be done. And so otherwise we just try not to break things, but we can't really be building that right now.
Okay.
So it's really a matter of prudence. What has guided us. Lacking the expertise, we have to be careful.
That makes sense. And then there was one other thing that I can wait for that until next week, because I haven't made too much progress on it, and I've already talked a lot.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Matthias, anything else that you want to bring up?
Not particularly. I said everything. I was working mostly with Mike, so that's it.
Okay. Paul, I'm skipping the minuses. Paul.
Oh, I already talked.
Anything that you want to bring up in addition?
Nope.
Okay, and okay.
Oh, actually, one thing, Paul, would you? We should get some time, and if anyone else wants, I want to talk about Russian language support because I feel like between the two of us, we might be able to handle that. And there are like 3 different issues.
We will do that.
Wonderful.
I'll just jump in here again as we're wrapping up. Good to be here. I look forward to meeting people that I haven't met already. I'm getting started on doing some initial experimentation with real-time collaboration. I don't have a whole lot to report yet, but with my next week.
Come on, Ian. It's already been 24 hours. It's not done yet?
He's not really smiling.
Yeah, I guess
He's waiting to collaborate.
That was a chuckle.
I mean, it's been more because he went east and there is a time zone difference.
Oh, there you go. No, it's good. Great to have you there. Gino. Gino's here. Gino, at the last minute showed up. Is there anything that you want to give us a quick update on? No. Okay. Silence. Anyone else who may want to bring anything up to the team? No. All right. All right. Then have fun, folks in New York. Let us know how it keeps on going. We wish you much success, and everyone else. Thanks, and we'll see you next.
Bye.
Bye.